So our theme this month is the creativity of life. And today's topic is creative freedom. In our recent class that we just finished on the power of decision, one of the chapters was titled Creativity. And those of us in the class found that was really a valuable chapter. And then I thought, it's important that we use this as the pivot for this month's talk. Because creativity is at the very center of the core of each one of us. Comes with the package. Yet, sadly, for many people, it never gets recognized or activated. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. Did you know there was a senior and a junior Oliver Wendell Holmes? Yeah. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. was an American physician, poet, and polymath. What is a polymath? A polymath is a person who is wide-ranging in their knowledge and their learning. In any event, that's who and what Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. was. He was based in Boston, Massachusetts, about the time so many of the transcendentalists were showing up on the East Coast. And he was a member of a group called the Fireside Poets. He was acclaimed by his peers as one of the best writers of the day. And one of his best known quotes, and I'm sure you'll recognize it, is, "One's mind, once stretched to a new idea, never regains its original dimensions." It's a statement used often because of its clarity and because of its importance. Ralph Waldo Emerson used it, Ernest Holmes used it, and so did Raymond Charles Barker. And so do I, rather frequently, which probably some of you will remind me after the service that I do, because I do. It's a great reminder. And I believe that the message in that saying is anchored in our desire and in our ability to be creative. Even more than that, I really believe that it's the door to our own creative freedom. Ernest Holmes, in his general summary of the Science of Mind textbook, puts it this way: if what we are now experiencing are images of no longer useful littleness, we can cease experiencing that when we have the will and the imagination to set our vision in an opposite direction and hold it there. It's the job of the imagination to set the vision. The will holds it in place until the creative genius of the inner life transforms it from any limitation and transmutes it into the liberty by spiritual law. Wow, that may sound heavy to you, but that's only when you first hear it. However, if you have a spiritual practice, and if your spiritual practice includes spiritual mind treatment, affirmations, guided meditations, you're already practicing it. See how easy? And if it doesn't, or there is no daily spiritual practice, well, perhaps it's time you should consider that. That is, if you wish to activate and utilize your creative freedom. Holmes also reminds us in his chapter on causes and conditions to never limit our view of life by any past experiences, which is another way of staying in the now moment, isn't it? Staying in the now moment rather than constantly retreating to the past. The possibilities of life are inherent within our capacity to image what life can be. And we can back that by the power to produce that energy, that imagery, that divine imagination. Holmes goes on to say, It's not a question of failing or succeeding. It's simply about sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. He talks about that where spiritual mind treatment is concerned. One of the things that he says is you only have to do the treatment once for it to come into being. And when it doesn't, treat again. But it's not the same treatment you did the first time, because the first treatment you did moved something in consciousness. Actually, it moved something in the entire universe, but it's enough for you to focus on your own consciousness. So you have moved something in consciousness such that when you do treatment for what seems like that same thing again, you're doing it from a different level of consciousness. You're proceeding into the next step. Why is it happening step by step? Because that's what you are ready to accept in that moment, is the next step, and the next step, and the next step. Spirit never deserts you. It supports you in doing this step by step so that you are continuing to be successful, which is why we say so strongly, do your spiritual mind treatments by mouth and do them out loud, as opposed to writing them out, because once you write it out, it's for that moment, not the next moment or the next moment. So unless you want to be writing every moment, speak your word and do your spiritual mind treatment, and the next time you feel called upon to do it that has anything to do with that particular desired outcome, speak your word again and notice that your words are different than they were the first time. Holmes also reminds us in his chapter on causes and conditions to never limit our view of life by any past experiences. He goes on to say, it's not a question of failing or succeeding. It's simply about sticking to an idea until it becomes a tangible reality. Kathy Jolene is a name that occasionally comes up in conversations by religious scientists. She's been active in the science of mind movement for many years in a variety of ways. And yet, when you Google her name, what comes up are the results of her work and very little about the person herself. A one-time editor of the Science of Mind magazine, she has interviewed many New Thought authors and speakers. A writer herself, she has authored a number of books, one of which is titled, It's About You, Living Fully, Living Free, Through the Creative Power of Your Thought. And then it has a tagline, as if the title isn't long enough, and the tagline is even longer. A workbook for using spiritual mind treatment to experience health, happiness, abundance, and peace. Kathy is nothing if not detailed in what she intends to provide you to take into mind. Kathy herself is a licensed practitioner with Centers for Spiritual Living, and as a matter of fact, there is an article by her in this month's Science of Mind magazine. It's titled, Directing Your Creative Power for Good. So if you haven't read it already, it's certainly worth your time to do so. She talks about unleashing and revitalizing the creative power within you. I don't know about you, but when I hear those two words, I feel like ramping up, unleashing, revitalizing, like get with the program kind of thing. So here are her thoughts on ways we can derive spiritual support in directing our own lives. First of all, affirm your truth by making use of I am statements. I am prosperous. I am healthy. I am creative. It's in the now moment. It's all about me, and it identifies very clearly what my intention is. Number 2, act as if by using your creative imagination. You remember the line in one of the Disney songs A dream is a wish your heart makes. Well, this isn't all that different, is it? Act as if it is. It's already in my consciousness. It's already in my mind. And that's my creative imagination. The only thing left is for it to manifest. And I've done the hard work. I've already done the preparation. Now all I have to do is watch it appear. And then number 3, reframe your past with your willingness to forgive and release. Gosh, how many times have we talked about that? And yet, every time we talk about it, we renew that intention and that power to address that. Your willingness to forgive, your willingness to release the past. Kathy Jolene is good at getting to the heart of utilizing our creative freedom with concise statements that guide us to take action. And even though many of us may question our own creativity, we're free to take these steps and other positive ways simply by invoking or expanding them in our spiritual practice. Is it work? Yes. But so is breathing. So is eating. So is growing and picking flowers. We are unceasingly at work in this thing called life. But Kathy reminds us that nothing can confine us or limit us. New thoughts, she says, create new conditions. Each of us is a center in infinite mind. That's a little different way to look at it, perhaps, than some of us have in the past, that we are a center in infinite mind. Each one of us with a creative power for good in the universe, not just in our room, not just in our house, not just in our community, but in the universe. And each one of us is free to make use of this power in whatever way we choose. And Dr. Holmes would add to that, and as much of it as we are ready to receive. So creative freedom is not something we just look at, read about, talk about, or listen to conversations about. When we are serious about creativity in our lives and the freedom to bring it forth, we must let go of any perceived lack of it or anything else, for that matter, and concentrate on bringing forth its presence in our lives. It's about what Ernest Holmes calls the law of correspondence. One of you said to me one time, how many laws are there anyway? You know, it's not just about the legal laws that we live with in the human equation, but it seems like every time we turn around, Dr. Holmes or Judge Troward have another law, another spiritual law. And there are a lot of them, most of which you practice and don't even realize it. But this one, the law of correspondence, we're going to talk about a little more. When we are serious about creativity in our lives, any limits on our ability to demonstrate intention depends upon our ability to provide a mental equivalent, familiar word for many of you, a mental equivalent of that intention. The law of correspondence works from the belief to the thing or the expression. It's also true that as our consciousness grows and unfolds, our power provides us with the expression of a greater mental equivalent. So as we address this through our spiritual practice, what we demonstrate today, tomorrow, and the next day is not as important as the tendency which our thought is taking, the dominant attitude of our mind, the tendency of the direction of our thought is the most important thing there, because as we practice that each day, we become stronger at directing our tendency. as we practice it each day, we become stronger in our belief that that is exactly what takes us to the desired outcome. So it's like building muscles on the treadmill, or in the canoe, or on the exercycle. You do it on a regular basis, don't you? You don't do it one time and say, okay, now I have all the muscles I need in my legs to cause me to be able to do the pole vault, if you ever wanted to. But the idea is that the consistency of building the spiritual practice and the intention of expressing, bringing forth, manifesting, grows stronger and stronger the more often you do it. And it's a good idea to meditate daily, to sense and to feel the infinite indwelling spirit as the active principle of our lives. This too supports the growth of expressing a greater mental equivalent. It's also wise to remember that our lives are the result of our own self-contemplation, and we are peopled with the personifications of our thoughts and ideas. Now, that's kind of a reality check, isn't it? When you realize who you associate with, or who chooses to associate with you. You are the result of your own self-contemplation. So what you are drawing to you is where you are in the process of intention. If it's not looking like you would choose for it to look, what do you change? Your self-contemplation. This may call to mind something that you've heard me say on previous occasions, maybe even numerous occasions. As you learn more about the philosophy of the science of mind, the people you know, the people you spend time with, and the people who support you spiritually are likely to be different best friends forever than in the past. In fact, some of the former associations are either gone or greatly modified. The phrase I've used in the past is, there will be casualties. Perhaps a more gentle way to describe that would be more comfortable for you, like your choices of the people around you demonstrate the conscious person you are becoming. So let me say that again. Your choices of those around you demonstrate the conscious person you are becoming. So remember too that divine spirit, or whatever you call your source of being, is changeless reality. That's the only thing that doesn't change in the universe, is the fact that that reality is always there for you to draw upon. You, we, me, and probably the other 8 billion people, inhabitants currently living here in this plane of existence, we're all the instruments through which spirit operates, expresses, speaks. However, and I have to tell you, this is good news, however, spirit is never bound by the form it takes, and it is not affected by any apparent cause or condition. It is forever free and creative. If this doesn't do anything else, it swings your attention away from the collective unconsciousness and focuses it on spirit, on divine creation, creative energy, because it is never bound by the form it takes. It can move on to the next best thing in your life as quickly or more quickly than you can. So you are never stuck in anything, anywhere. And what I am calling spirit, creative energy, God, source of being, is an impersonal principle. When you or I or anyone speaks, It is the law unto the things spoken, regardless of what conditions exist. Which means there is nothing that can prevent your word from manifesting but you. So, one, alone in consciousness with the infinite, constitutes a complete majority. When you utter the words in treatment, God and I are one, mean it, feel it, accept it, practice it, have that conversation with God, Spirit, creative energy as partners. Know this in your thought. Know this in your work, your spiritual work, in perfect peace and calm. This is the time to be level. The enthusiasm is in the doing, but in the work, stay focused, stay level, stay calm. Always expect the good. There isn't anything but good unless you create something else. Always expect the good. Have enthusiasm. Have a radiant flow of love flowing through your consciousness after you complete the spiritual contact with Spirit. Then begin to live that. Act as if it is. And it'll be. There's no question about it. And remember, when we talk about creative freedom, we're describing the very source of our being, which always has creative freedom. There are no limitations on God, on location, on expression, on manifestation, on positive processes. There are no limitations. It never forces that, though, upon anyone or anything. Instead, it awaits the call or the direction of each of its creations, and that would be each one of us. Upon your clear intention that creative freedom becomes available to you to direct it in your life in that very instance, that is unfolding. Don't miss it. It's worth looking for. And so it is. Thank you.